Welcome to the Selling to Corporate podcast, where we're going to be challenging your sales beliefs around selling to corporate organizations and help you increase your bottom line profits every single month. I am Jessica Lorimer, your sales expert and guide in this world of selling to corporate companies, skyrocketing your company sales and making the impact that you really want in the world. Now, don't forget, if you do enjoy the show today, please do head over to iTunes and leave us a review. But enjoy this episode, and I am really looking forward to sharing some epic sales wisdom with you. Hello. It is March. How has this even happened? This year, I keep saying it, but it's flying past. And I know that in about, approximately 2 weeks' time, or what feels like 2 weeks' time, it's going to be November and we're going to be talking about goal setting all over again. But we are officially at the end month of Q1. And that is just so exciting. I think it's one of those, I get really excited about the quarters. It must still be the salesperson in me. Because when I was working in the corporate space, the end of the quarter was really exciting. That was when you were going to get told about your overall commission for the quarter, and you would see if you'd achieved your quarterly targets, and, the competitive spirit in me got super excited about all of these things. And since taking it into my own business, I've been really, really excited to continue tracking those metrics because I'm a big sales nerd. And speaking of metrics and trackers, I am really, really excited about all the amazing people who've bought the sales tracker projection sheet. If you haven't yet and you are wanting to use the discount code, please make sure that you do head over to the link at the top of the show notes. It says sales tracker spreadsheet and then gives you a really funky looking hyperlink. Or drop us an email if you can't find it, because the code TRACK, all in caps, gives you the ability to get your discount before the end of March. And we've had so many people purchase it, and most importantly, so much lovely feedback, including a really lovely testimonial from Ali, who said, "Thank you so much for this. This is a game changer. I had all my goals and projections on paper, and until doing this, realizing that what I had didn't actually even add up correctly. And now I can see so much growth and in plain text how possible it all is." If you are somebody who is like, actually, maybe I need to get excited about the end of the quarter. Maybe I need to do something a little bit differently. Maybe Q1 hasn't gone as planned and I need to track my numbers and do it differently. Or maybe Q1 has gone even better than you could have expected. And you're like, actually, I need to track all my sales. Otherwise, I'm going to be off track for the rest of the year. Make sure you go and grab that. Like I say, the link for it is at the top of the show notes. And if you use the code TRACK, all in caps, at the checkout, you will get a discount for listening through the podcast as well. So on that note of tracking things and sales pages, I guess, it's a good segue, sort of. I'm going to shoehorn it in. So talking about today's topic, which is all about what passive income really is when it comes to selling to corporate clients. And I've had a lot of requests for this episode. And when I say a lot of requests, I don't mean that people have written in and been like, "Hey Jess, could you do an episode on passive income for corporates, please?" Because I don't think people do that all that often. But I have had a lot of people in my inbox who've been like, "Jess, is it possible to sell a passive income product to a corporate company? If so, what do they pay for it? And also, what do they buy that's passive?" And I've had a lot of that over the last probably 18 months, because I think passive income is one of those, it's just sexy topics, isn't it, really? Sounds really simple when you put it like that. But it is. Passive income, I think, for most entrepreneurs and small business owners, is a really sexy idea. I'm not one to disagree with this. Just as an FYI, I know that there's a lot of controversy over passive income, and I will say that I don't love the Facebook ads with the Lamborghinis or the rented private jets or whatever people are doing these days. But the idea of creating something once and then just selling it over and over, I really like, and I've done for years and years and years with corporate organizations. But I do want to start the episode with a little definition, because you know me, when we talk about a topic, I like to make sure that we're all on the same page about what we're talking about. And I think that there are some interesting definitions when it comes to what passive income is, especially in the kind of like online marketing and education space. And so I just want to make sure that we are on the same page as to what I'm talking about with regards to passive income for corporate companies. So when I talk about truly passive income, I'm talking about the original definition, the product that you create once, that you sell in the same format, and you don't make any changes to, and you don't show up live to give any kind of support or additional help. Okay, that is passive income. So when we talk about traditional passive income products, most people think books, because you write a book once and you sell it to a bunch of people, hopefully, if your book is good and if you've got a great marketing plan, and it just continues being the book and giving the support and, doing whatever you set out the book or for the book to do. However, what we've seen over recent years is a kind of dilution of the definition of passive income. And what I mean by that is we've actually seen this movement into talking about passive income products, but what people actually mean is semi-passive or leveraged products and services. And that's not because I think those people are liars, just to put it out there. But I think that there's been some confusion over the fact that, particularly in the online education space, you can create a group program, for example. You can create all the materials, like the C-suite self-study that we run for entrepreneurs, for example, and that then is a passive income product or service. But the reality is, if you're providing any kind of live support, Q&A sessions, hot seats, any kind of additional support in any way, it's not passive. It can be semi-passive because you've created most of it, but it's not true passive income. And I think it's an interesting distinction. Not because I don't believe that passive income exists, or because I think people who sell the passive income dream are liars or anything like that. But because actually I think it's become a lot harder to sell passive income products, truly passive income products, to individuals. And you might be thinking, well, what do you mean? Like, how do you mean it's more difficult to sell them to individuals? Surely it's easy. And the reality is, it's become harder because A, there's so much of it and so much of it is not very good. And B, because you need such a large audience of individuals to be able to generate income from passive income services. So what tends to happen is that, it can be very costly to find those new leads. You have to do a lot of work in terms of audience building. There's often a need for a paid ad strategy in place, all of that kind of stuff. Completely normal, completely strategic business idea. There's nothing wrong with it. But it does take a lot of work, and it takes a lot of experience, and it takes a lot of expertise in marketing and in sales strategies and in funnels and all of those things that actually the average entrepreneur doesn't have in their first 2 years, 3 years, sometimes even 5 years of business. And so it is much more restrictive. Now, I'm talking about this as somebody who in, 2019, I think it was, I hired my third Facebook ads manager. Third. And they were great. There's nothing wrong with them, except my Facebook ad account did get shut down. And we are now 5 years later, and it is still not back up. Now, I will say that it not being back up is primarily my fault. I haven't at any point bothered to contact Facebook because I thought, well, do you know what? I'm just not going to give Zuckerberg any more of my money. That's fine. But it did make me think how interesting it was to be so reliant on one ad strategy and having to have a sales funnel, and the deep depression that was sparked by suddenly not being able to build an audience and all this kind of thing using paid advertising. Not only that, but, me and Zux don't have a great relationship, like for many reasons, but also that. So I just at that point thought, well, all right, let it go. don't worry about selling passive income products to individuals anymore. And I really just didn't after that. It's very rare that I do anything that is entirely passive for the entrepreneur side of my business or the B2C side of my business. Occasionally, we have things like the sales tracker spreadsheet. Let's be very clear, that's passive. You buy it. I'm not going to answer any questions about your revenue projections. So occasionally we do sell something that is entirely passive, but it's rare. And that's my business choices, partly because I'm quite, can I say anally retentive on the podcast? I feel like I can. I'm quite anally retentive. I like to get to know our customers. I like to get to know what people are using our products and services for. And I like to be able to be involved in some way. And that's why the majority of our products and services come with some kind of extra assistance, whether it's the C-suite self-study and having the monthly hot seat sessions, or whether it's coming along to one of our events like Converting Corporates and being there for 2 days in person and having access to my brain to be able to ask questions. I find that that's much more fun for me. But what is interesting is that over the years, I've sold a bunch of passive income products and services to corporate companies. And I don't feel the same attachment to having to have live support for corporate sales teams as I do for individuals. I don't know why. Maybe there's some deep-rooted sense of responsibility that I have for entrepreneurs. If you're a therapist, don't dig into that. But it's true, right? We all have different things that fulfill us. And it's interesting for me because selling passive income products to corporate organizations is something I've done a lot of. It's something I've helped a lot of clients do. And actually, it's interesting from the perspective that it is much easier to sell passive income products to corporate clients, truly passive income products. And over the course of today's episode, I'm going to share a few examples with you because I think that that's always helpful. I think it's one of those things that when we start an episode like this, it's important to understand that this is a huge topic. It could be a lot of different podcast episodes. I'm going to try and keep it to about 30 minutes because that's the time that I have today before I have to go and take Max to his latest vet's appointment for his sports injections. We call them sports injections. They are for his arthritis. But I think, if you have questions after the episode that you think, oh, I'd like to dig more into that, then let me know by email and maybe I'll do a follow-up episode if there are other things that we need to cover and see later on in the second quarter of the year. Ooh, exciting. So let's dig in. Passive income with corporate companies. The myth. The myth with passive income is that it can't be sold to corporate organizations and that corporate organizations will only ever want to buy services that involve your time, your energy, and live support. And that really isn't the case. And in fact, I think over the years, I've seen people sell a variety of passive income products to corporate companies. And these include things like books, selling a high volume, 500 plus books to organizations that they're working with for their employees. They involve things like checklists for particular initiatives, awareness days, or projects. They involve things like memberships or courses. And so I think it's really interesting because when people ask me what kind of products can be sold or what kind of passive income products can be sold to corporate companies, I'm like, well, it's the exact same ones that you could sell to individuals. The difference is that most corporate organizations will buy passive income products at scale or volume, meaning that instead of selling one course or one membership or one book a week, you can sign contracts to sell 50 plus courses or 100 plus seats in a membership or, like I say, 500 plus books. That is way more interesting to me because when we're talking about selling something at volume, we're talking about generating a significant amount of revenue for starters, which is always good. We love that. We're also talking about generating such a significant amount of revenue that we are able to create a really epic delivery experience. And I think that that is something that has been missing historically from the B2C passive income market for the last few years. Typically, it tends to be like, oh, I've created this, passive course that you can consume anytime. And then it's like, oh, you've got 600 videos with no workflow brilliant. But, you only pay $9.99, so I guess fine. You can hear the disparagement in my voice, and I'm trying. I really do try, but customer experience is the hill that I will die on. Like, I think it's really, really important. And when you're selling passive income products at scale or at high volume to corporate companies, you can take more time on customer experience. You've also, interestingly enough, when you're selling passive income products to corporate companies, got the fact that you are likely not selling them on a one-off basis. Usually you're selling these on multi-year deals, which means you have either licensing protocols or multi-year agreements in place, which means that you create something once and you're going to get paid for it, not just for 1 year, but potentially for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and so on. And that makes a huge difference to your bottom line revenue. And it means you're not starting every single year at zero. So I think that when we talk about selling passive income products to corporate companies, completely agree. I think everyone should be aiming for it at some point in their business. But that brings me on to my next point, right? It's, yes, okay, you can sell passive income products to corporate companies, but when? And that is an entirely different question in my mind. And the reason that it's a different question is because the average person who is thinking about selling to corporate companies and who hasn't before, maybe you've thought about selling to individuals. Maybe you actually have successfully sold to individuals and you're used to creating a course for the end user, but you're not necessarily used to creating a resource that a company can successfully onboard all of its end users or a cross-section of end users onto. You might not have the ability to create almost like a workflow for those end users. You might not have the understanding yet of that industry in terms of what they actually need from a passive income resource. And that's not to say that you won't ever, but it is to say that then maybe it's not the place to start. I've seen this a lot recently. I've seen people who are like, oh, well, I worked in corporate companies once, so I think I know what they want and what would be most useful. But unfortunately, working in a company as an end user for learning management system or a course or a workshop, whatever, A, doesn't mean you'll have ever had the best experience with those things, because it very much depends on what your company used to purchase and what that looked like. And B, it doesn't mean necessarily that you are able or have the skills yet or the resources yet to create the exact experience that you want for a client. So, it really depends on what kind of passive income product you want to sell and what kind of commitment you're going to have to selling it. So what I mean by that in the simplest sense is it's fine to spend 6 months writing a book, but let's be clear, organizations are not going to pay you £100 a book. So is there a point to doing that if you are at the beginning stages of your business and you want that to be your primary revenue source? Absolutely not. But if you are somebody that already has a really successful course, or you have an awesome keynote talk, I'm thinking of a client of mine, Andy, who came on the podcast a few months ago, who is an amazing keynote speaker in the talent development space. If you have a course or a keynote that could be supplemented with a book or a checklist or another passive income product of choice that is lower in terms of transformation, then absolutely you can sell that at volume as an upsell. What I'm saying is just make sure that you're picking the right thing to sell at the right time for your business. Don't sit there and think, oh, I'm going to spend all of this time creating something that ultimately I'm only going to be able to sell to corporate companies at £100 a go, because that's not going to make massive margins with your revenue. Equally, if you're thinking, well, actually, Jess, I've got a course that I had that I wanted to sell in the B2C space, could I sell it to corporates? The simple and short answer is probably yes. Without seeing it, I can't say an exact, I'm tuning in with my psychic brain, yeah, it all looks good, definitely go and sell it to corporates. But for most people, yeah, absolutely. If you've got a course that you've designed that works to get a very specific result for somebody in the B2C or individual space, then yeah, you can probably, with a few tweaks, sell that to corporate organizations. Here's the thing. Now, I don't have a problem with people selling passive income products. I also don't have a problem with people teaching how to sell passive income, or all that kind of thing. I've got no real feelings on it. And I think that it's always an interesting one, isn't it? Because like I said earlier, it does kind of come with this weird, oh, look, they're stood in front of a rented jet kind of advertising strategy. And I've been out of that world for so long that I no longer care. But what I will say is that selling a passive income product to a corporate organization, any organization, is very different than learning how to sell it to an individual. And there are a few reasons behind that. One, like I mentioned earlier, is the fact that when you're selling to individuals, you have to have a huge volume in terms of audience to run people through either an evergreen or a live launch strategy. So people who teach passive income and selling passive income products or services, or semi-passive income products or services, are often really great at teaching you how to grow a Facebook group, how to get Facebook ads working for you, how to create a funnel, how to write sales pages, landing pages, webinar sequences, all of that kind of thing. They're great at that. But that doesn't work to sell those passive income products to corporate companies. Corporate stakeholders aren't sat there going, oh, do you know what I'd like to watch on a Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. is a 45-minute webinar that is basically just a really long pitch where for the first 8 minutes I talk about my dog and the holidays I go on and, my luxury lifestyle before I get into 2 or 3 relatively vague points that I think sound inspirational. And then at the end, I do a 15-minute sales pitch for my latest course. That's just not what they're doing with their time. And they're not going to look at 7 days worth of emails afterwards, telling them all the reasons that they should buy it and giving a bunch of case studies. Like, it's just not the same sales process at all, which is lucky, really, because if you're somebody like me and you are much too lazy to go down that route and you don't want to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on Facebook ads and trialing different ad strategies and different ad managers and different social media strategies, then actually selling passive income products to corporate companies could be exactly right for you, because it can be done much more simply. It can be done through using the normal 5-step process that I teach around clarity, lead generation, business development, creating offers and proposals, and then delivery and resell. It can also be useful to sell passive income products through upsells, like I mentioned earlier, with upselling supplementary resources from a keynote talk or a course that you might be selling. It can also be done via referrals. You can have referrals from one area of a business into another for an existing passive resource that you might have already sold into an organization. So there are lots of ways to do it that don't involve 500 steps and 10 landing pages and split testing sales pages and ads and all of that kind of thing. You also usually get paid significantly more, so it becomes worth spending the time on outreach. What I'm saying here is that actually, I think at some point of every service-based entrepreneur's career with corporate sales is that absolutely you should be having a passive income product, whether that's a book or a checklist or an awareness day pack or a course or a membership. Even something like a video series or a private podcast that you sell. The things that I've seen clients sell genuinely are endless. And all of the things I've just mentioned there, I've had clients who've sold all of them successfully to corporate organizations. I've had people who've sold private podcast series to companies. I've had people who've sold private video series to companies. I've had people who've sold awareness day packs to companies, who've sold checklists, who've sold books, who've sold courses, who've sold memberships. I've sold the C-suite to organizations to use for their sales teams. So these are all real and relevant things, but they didn't use the big launch strategies that we see in the online space. They didn't use Facebook ads. They didn't use hundreds of posts on social media. They didn't use 10 emails sent over 7 days or, various landing pages, sales pages, DMs, whatever the stuff is now. Instead, they used that simple best practice sales process that I teach on this podcast, in the C-suite, at our events, of understanding what is it that the transformation that is going to be provided to a client through that product or service, and then how are they going to approach clients about that product or service, and who are they going to approach, and what message is it that they're going to write to get them interested in hearing more about it and having a qualified sales call, and what questions are they going to ask on that sales call to help them self-identify that, yes, they do need that product or service, and so on and so on. So when we think about passive income, really, when we're selling to corporate companies, we can understand four main things. One, passive income products and resources absolutely can and should be sold to corporates at the right point for your business. Two, selling passive income products or resources to corporate companies will usually net you a lot more revenue when you sell them to corporate organizations. And that's usually in the form of multi-year deals and agreements or high volume of licenses and things like that. Three, the sales strategy to sell passive income resources is very, very different when selling B2B than it is selling B2C. This shouldn't come as a major surprise because selling B2B and selling B2C are very different anyway, but just for the avoidance of doubt, these are two very different things. So if you are contemplating, going and selling a passive income resource to corporate companies, please take advice from somebody who knows how to sell B2B, not somebody who knows how to sell B2C, because they won't understand the difference. Okay. Even if they've had the most successful career selling B2C ever, unfortunately, the sales strategy is different. And if they haven't sold their own courses, programs, memberships, or helped a significant amount of clients to sell their own courses, programs, memberships, books, checklists, whatever, to corporate organizations on the passive income side, they might not be the right fit to teach you how to sell it, but they could be a great fit to teach you how to build a passive income resource, right? They might be the absolute right fit to do that, but they won't necessarily be able to teach you how to sell it. So make sure that you're buying the right resource for you if you're going to go and sell passive income resources. And then finally, understand the difference between a passive income resource that is going to simply generate passive income and a passive income resource that's going to make a significant dent in your bottom line. What I mean by that is we can get paid a lot more if we create the right passive income resources and products to sell to corporate clients. There really is no point putting 6 months, 12 months of work into a book, for example, if it's not going to generate the premium revenue that you want right now. So really make key commercial decisions about that and what you actually want from it before you start thinking about whether you just want to make money on demand or whether you actually want to generate significant revenue from a product or service. And in that instance, it might be worth thinking about the higher ticket passive income resources that you can create rather than the lower ticket ones that are more around being supplementary resources and upsells to things that you're already delivering live. Okay, so more on the course side, the membership side, that kind of thing. My final point on this, for anyone who's interested, I thought I would use myself as a case study because I think that's quite helpful, is that you can truly sell exactly the same thing in terms of product to a corporate as you can to an individual. You might brand it differently, for example, or you might have a different onboarding process. It even might be hosted differently, but you can sell exactly the same thing. And I've done that over the last 5 years by selling the C-suite, a version of the C-suite to corporate organizations. And that has been really, really interesting and really good fun because when corporate companies buy the C-suite from me, they mainly host it internally themselves. So I don't pay for any hosting. It can be branded to that organization, which is pretty cool. So it can look exactly how they want it to look. And they are responsible for doing that. It is much more lucrative. So again, you can sign more multi-year license deals with multiple employees buying them at any one, or not buying them at any one time, but having companies buy them for multiple employees at any one time or licenses for multiple employees at any one time. And obviously, you don't have to provide any live support for it either. So you end up essentially contributing a course or program to an internal learning management system or LMS that their employees can use for a particular amount of time. And I've done that for the last 5 years, really enjoyed it. It's very relaxing and it is very, very lucrative. And for the right client, it works really, really well. Like everything though, passive income products and resources, you have to be really careful to monitor, because when they are passive, if you don't have a good onboarding process and you don't have a good measurement or metric process, it can be very hard to re-sign multi-year renewals if you can't evidence that people have used it or that they've made the most out of it. So when you are a newer or less experienced seller in the B2B space, I would advise doing as much as you can live before you branch into the passive income resource space, because that way you know where people get stuck and where people trip up with courses or programs, or you find out the more frequently asked questions that people have and you can preempt them in any passive resources that you can create. That actually makes your life a lot easier. And then in the background, you can be putting together those onboarding resources or progress measurement resources that you need to build a commercial business case for your corporate client when it comes to renewal time. Anyway, I hope that that's all been useful and given you a bit of an overview into the world of passive income for corporate clients. Like I say, it has been one that people have been really interested in just hearing more about and understanding. And if you are interested in understanding a bit more, or there are other questions that you have, let me know, because I am always somebody who can be convinced to put together another episode and answer some key questions on passive income for corporate organizations. All right, we've got some really exciting episodes coming up in March for you, and I'm doing some really exciting things this month. So make sure that you grab the sales tracker spreadsheet if you haven't already. Use the code TRACK, all in caps, to get your exclusive discount until the end of this month. And if you're not on our newsletter list, go across to the website and get yourself signed up, because we've got some very, very cool things about to happen. I'll see you in the next episode.